Good afternoon, students. I thought we could work on some of the angle proof activities together, and I thought I would show you a little bit to help you with your upcoming test. So I've taken a few questions and I thought I'd work through them. When I look at number one, the first thing that I notice is that 75 is directly across from B. That means B is 75 degrees, and that is OPP. Remember to add your proof at all time. Now the other thing that I noticed was that this is a straight line from here to here. And then if I want to make that a full 180 degrees, I have 180, so I'll just write this right here. I have 180, and I'm going to take off the 75. So that should leave me with 105 degrees. Okay? And then I have 42, so I'm going to take the 42 off. Okay? And that should leave me with 63 degrees. That means A is 63 degrees, and I use the supplementary rule. So, oops. 63 degrees, and it was sup. Okay? Now, what's really interesting is if A is 63, that means C is 63. Because of OPP, and D is 42 because of OPP as well. Excuse me. Now in question 2, there's a couple things we can do. First of all, we want to identify the fact that we have an isosceles triangle, and we can see here that these hash marks are there. So that means that X and Y will be equal to one another when we get to it. Okay, so we need to keep that in mind as we start working our way through. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to get W first, because again, I understand that this is 180 degrees. I have 48, so I'm going to take 180, I'm going to subtract off the 48, and that will give me 132 degrees. So W is 132, and it was supplementary was our rule, SUPP. Okay. Now, these two angles, angle X and angle Y, are equal. They have to add up with the 48 to make 180 degrees. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 180 and we're going to subtract off the 48. Now we know that that's 132. But I'm also then going to divide that by 2 because I have the two angles. Divide by 2. Oops. Divide by 2. And that will give me 66. So Y is 66 degrees and X is 66 degrees. So 66, 66, oops. And both of them would be sum of the angles of a triangle, SAT, SAT, okay? Now Z, pretty straightforward. Z and X need to add up to 180. Well, we already have 66, so if I do 180 minus 66, okay, I'm going to get 114 degrees. Oops. So 114, and that would be supplementary. Okay, folks? So right away in the first couple that we've worked on, we can see we used a lot of supplementary, we've used opposite, and we've used SAT. Now the next one that I want to look at, which would be number 3 here, and we have P, Q, R, S, and T. This is where we can use our rules. And I'm going to look here and I can see a C pattern. So I'm going to highlight that. This is a backwards C. But we know that in a C pattern, the two angles have to add up to 180. So we have 64, and that means P is going to be 180, oops, 180 minus 64. All right, and that is going to give us 116. So P is 116, and we'd use C pattern for that one. So C pattern, okay. Now, if I have, we can also look and find a Z pattern here. So let me identify the Z pattern and see if we can go something a little bit thicker here. And let me change the color. Now, as you can see the green coming on, we have a Z pattern. And what's really interesting about the Z pattern here is that it's the opposite position on opposite sides of the transversal. So if it's 64 here, the opposite is down here. So S is 64, and we would say it's because of Z pattern. And R is 116 because of Z pattern as well. So as long as we know where the patterns are, we're in really good shape. Now Q would be 64, and we could use OPP. And T would be 116, and it's OPP as well. Okay. Now, if we scroll down a little further, we have these last two, and I think I'll draw them on the screen here. So the first thing that I'm going to look at in this one, number 4, we're going to work on number 4 here, is I'm going to try to figure out which angle I can do. And I actually think I can get X and I can get Z pretty quick. If you look at X right here, we have 28 and we have 24. So if I do 28 plus 24, I get 52. And if I do 180 minus 52, I get 128. X is 128 because of the SAT rule. The angles need to add up to 180 degrees, so 128. Now, what else is really interesting is that Z we can get because we know that Z and the 24 must add up to 90 degrees. We can see the 90-degree angle here. So that means if we take 90 minus 24, we are going to get 66 degrees. And that means that Z is equal to 66 degrees. And the reasoning, it was complementary. Complementary angles add up to 90. So that's a 66 here. And then we've got to try to figure out Y and S. Now this is where it gets kind of interesting. We need to get this angle here to unlock it. I know it's not asked for, but it's something that we need to use. So we do 180 minus 128. And that, my friends, is going to give us 52 degrees. So we don't need to write that one down. So this might be where you get stuck, because how do you get Y without it? Well, the reason we got that one is because what it will do, if we have 66 plus 52, okay, we end up with 118. Okay. That means the two of them, if we take 180 for the triangle and subtract the 118, we get 62 degrees. And that means that Y equals 62 degrees, and it's the sum of the angles of a triangle. Now S, that's 62. That means, though, that this has to add up, and we kind of know what it is. If we do 180 minus 62, we know we get 118, and that's what S is. S equals 118 for supplementary. Now, last but not least, we have this set up. And what's really interesting is that some of these angles are a little bit easier to get than we might have realized. So the reason I'm saying that, if we put A, B, and C, if we look at any of them, what do we know? Well, we know that A and B will be equal. If you look, this is a isosceles triangle. So we know that A equals B. We don't know what the angle is up top here, but we know that in the end, those two angles need to be the same. Now, if you look with me real carefully, you'll notice that we have an F pattern here. And that because they have parallel lines here, identified there and there, A is actually 58 degrees. And the reason it's 58 degrees is because of the F pattern. Same position on the same side of the transversal, right? Bottom, below the parallel line, below the parallel line. So 58 and its F pattern. Now, here's the kind of neat part. B we know is the same, and we could say it's because of the SAT, and you can put in brackets if you want isosceles. What that also tells us, and this is kind of a fun thing that we can do here, if you look real carefully with me, you'll notice that this is a C, oops, you'll notice that this is a C pattern. We've already identified the fact that B is 58. So if we do 180 minus 58, we would get 122, and that's what C is. 22, and we would call it C pattern. The main thing, folks, is to always take your time and use your rules to help you out.